As vote counting begins, the fate of Sudan's central region remains in doubt. At the center of it all, the Nuba tribe are set to become part of the north, but their allegiance remains with the south. While the MENKERIOS tribe in Abyei remain loyal to Khartoum, but their status is still to be determined. Separating a country is not as simple as drawing a line in the sand. There are ancient tribes and ways of life under threat. What happens between the tribes living in the border region of South Kordofan could mean the difference between war and peace. The Nuba are a group of 50 or more ethnic African tribes, numbering around 3.7 million people. They mostly inhabit the mountainous regions, but want to be part of the south. The nomadic MENKERIOS are another key tribe made up of more than 1 million people. Along with the incredibly strong Dinka Nok, they claim the crucial region of Abyei. In recent months, up to 55,000 weapons have reportedly been sent to the area. It was supposed to have reduced arms stockpiles to less than 1,000 under the terms of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. Now, the key to avoiding further bloodshed hangs largely on peace building in the regions inhabited by these tribes, but there are already signs of trouble. MUTASA is in Juba and HASSAN IBRAHIM in Khartoum.
This is the tomb of the Mahdi, a symbol of Islamic and Arabic identity of northern Sudan. The Mahdi, who in 1885 led the rebellion that defeated the colonialists, has tried to answer the nagging question of what is it to be a Sudanese. This is Souk Libya, Libya Market, where a collage of different Sudanese tribes are represented. We have 4, Gur'an, Masalid, LAGAWA, KABASH, Danagla, tribes that came from all over Sudan. And although relations among these people may appear normal, the secession of South Sudan along ethnic and religious lines could raise the question of identity once again.
There's a quiet excitement here as people anxiously await the results of the referendum. For many here, separating from the north could mean a chance to develop their region. This is one of the poorest places in the world, and the figures speak for themselves. 50% of the population don't have access to clean running water. 85% of adults cannot read or write. And the United Nations says last year, more than 4 million people relied on food aid. So for many people in southern Sudan, breaking away from the north could be the chance for a new beginning. And many people we're speaking to here have high expectations.
We want factories to be built so we can find jobs. If we made our own products, we would not have to import food from Uganda and Kenya.
We need good roads and good transport system. We are looking forward to independence from the north, but we hope freedom will make our lives better. We are praying our lives will improve.
For me, it's about my children. Where are they sleeping and what will their future be like? I want the best for them in a new South Sudan.
The wish list is long and expensive, but people here hope that being able to govern themselves could mean more houses, more hospitals, more schools for their children, and in some areas something as simple as a tarred road is what they've been waiting years for. They're making a start, for example. Here they've built some kind of bridge to help them cross to the other side. Over there you have families who've come back who are restarting, rebuilding their homes. There's a sense of hope and excitement here in southern Sudan. The key thing is will politicians be able to manage such high expectations?
Well, that's the view from inside Sudan. Still to come, we take a walk through the country's volatile border regions with the ancient Nuba tribe, find proof that former fighters have not laid down their arms, and the UN tells us what they're doing to ease the situation. Al Jazeera's Nick Clark joins me in the studio. Nick, you've been travelling through some of the country's sometimes volatile border regions.
That's right,
I should imagine it must be quite fascinating.
It is.
Talk this map through with me, if you will. Sitting between north and south is the Kordofan region, which is where you were. That takes in Abyei, that disputed region, and of course the Nuba Mountains. The question, I suppose, is what will happen to the tribes who inhabit those areas if the south secedes? I mean, some of them are in hostile territory. Who are they?
Absolutely. Well, they're a group of ancient tribes. They've been there for a very, very long time. And they inhabit this area of the Nuba Mountains, which you can see right there. And there's about 50 tribes in all. They speak almost as many languages, which is just incredible when you think it's quite a small area, in fact, isn't it? And they're very big on tradition. You've probably heard about the Nuban wrestling, this amazing festival of sport and fighting, and all the villagers from around take part, and they come, and we'll see more of that in a moment or two. It's absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
Nick, now the area is close to the proposed north-south border. The mountains, I suppose, act as almost a natural barrier.
Yeah, well, if you're going back in time, just way above the Nuba Mountains, towards the north of Sudan, that's where the Nubans lived, the black Africans lived. And as time went on, from around about the 14th century, the Baggara Arabs started pushing them down. So eventually they ended up here in the Nuba Mountains, which was a natural refuge, but not necessarily that safe. I mean, during the Civil War, they were absolutely nailed there. There was total devastation, thousands were killed, the hills were bombed a lot, and a lot of people died right there. And in fact, if you go there, it's extraordinary because you can't hear any bird song. There are no birds in the trees. There are no,
like a Holocaust.
Yeah, there's just no animals around. And there was one guy, our interpreter, in fact, who said that back in the 80s, you would see giraffe, you would see impala and gazelle and that sort of thing. But now it's all gone because it's just been obliterated.
And the situation, other than that, I mean, how did it?
It's improved to a degree. I mean, you'll go around and see kids, and they may just be wearing rags, but they speak pretty good English, which just goes to show how much store they set by education in the Nuba Mountains. It's very, very important to them. But still, a lot of problems, and primarily because the Nuba Mountains are in the north and they sided with the south in the Civil War, and that creates all sorts of issues, as we'll see now.
Across the Nuba Mountains, the men come to wrestle. It's village against village. A very African celebration of a harvest completed. And it's an afternoon of sheer passion and abandon. Ancient traditions framed by 21st century trouble, the menace of modern-day Sudan, a nation of conflict, tensions once again running high. The evils of the Civil War are still raw. Over 2 decades, thousands were arrested and tortured, burnt out of their homes and killed.
When I was detained, I was tortured badly day and night.
Mahmoud Kambal tells me how he was taken with 29 educated men from his village. They were all executed. He escaped by chance. To get a real grasp of the issues here, you need to examine the geography. Here we have a map of Sudan. Let's just take a look at it. Down here we have Juba, which is the capital of the south. Up here, Khartoum, the capital of the north. And along here, the proposed borderline. And right in the middle, in the north, are the Nuba Mountains. Now, in the Civil War, this area sided with the south, and there are deep concerns here about what might happen if the south gains independence. It is a highly sensitive, isolated area with a lot of remote hillside villages. Hard to imagine now, but warplanes once bombed these hills. Today, despite the apparent peace, there's still a threat from Baggara tribesmen on the plains.
Some of them, like women, they rape them, and like men, if they get you single like this, they may kill you. And even your cattle, this is the reason as why we bring the cattle inside here, for them to drink here.
The area is a volatile mix of rival Arab and African groups, with villagers tending crops in the lowlands, vying for land and water with Baggara cattle herders. We hear of a number of incidents.
2 Baggara came in the night with guns. They said would guard their camel, and they started shooting at us. We ran, but one of us was killed.
With escalating racial tensions, Joseph, like many here, want the Nuba Mountains to be under southern control.
Yeah, we understand geographically the Nuba Mountains belong to the north, but according to our government, the northerners should go separate, and for us, we go separate with south.
But Joseph is wrong. Under the terms of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, the people of the Nuba Mountains will remain under the Khartoum government. They have this, the popular consultation process, as their only means of having a say in their future. The overriding hope is a measure of autonomy will come to the region. For those like Daniel, who fought for years in the Civil War, to be ruled by their former enemies is unacceptable.
We, the Nubians and the Southerners, we were fighting the Arabs. We were fighting Arabs as our enemies.
So what will you feel if after all those years of fighting, they just say you can't have self-rule?
We go back for the war. Yeah, we go back to fight.
A fighting man's army jacket clothes his boy. In an area aligned to the south, but forever in the north, this could be an omen of the future.
So as you could get a sense, there's a real fear that fighting could return to the region. In the sensitive South Kordofan state just north of the border, Nick, you found evidence that trouble is already brewing there.
Yeah, that was the focus of our second film, if you like. We really wanted to try and substantiate these rumours that there is an arms build-up. And if you take a look at the map, you can see, so here is South Kordofan, this area, this volatile, very important state. And here is the border with the south, which will probably now become a new international border when South Sudan, if it gains secession, as it probably will. Now, the theory is that troops and convoys of arms and so forth are heading down towards the border area and are setting up camps there. But it's very hard to substantiate because the truth, of course, is elusive in Sudan, and why would they want us to find out that all these convoys have been going on? Of course. But the UN talk about reports of movements at night and so on and so forth, so it does seem to be that there is some kind of concerted effort to push troops down there. And
clearly that goes against the peace effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, back in 2005, it demanded that in South Kordofan, the levels of troops go back to pre-Civil War days. So that would be less than 1,000 troops, 1,000 soldiers. People say it's many, many thousands more than that. And then you throw in this problem of demobilization. The idea was, as far as the CPA was concerned, that tens of thousands of people would be demobilized, they would be reintegrated into society, they'd be given money, a certain amount of training, and it should have happened on a very big scale.
Or to police.
Absolutely, and it hasn't been happening on the sort of scale that they wanted to, and it's absolutely the opposite of what's happened.
On the tarmac of an airfield in North Sudan, 100 miles from the proposed border with the south, the governor of South Kordofan arrives home. He is Ahmed HAROUN, self-proclaimed man of the people, wanted for rape, murder and crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court, something he dismisses out of hand.
Mr. HAROUN, Nick Clark from Al Jazeera English. We're going to conduct an interview with you a little bit later. Good to see you. Yeah, in a short time.
We wanted to challenge him on the build-up of forces in his state. Pictures like these from last October have come into our hands. They purport to show large convoys of military equipment heading south, the Khartoum government arming the sensitive border area.
As head of state, I can reconfirm we are not going back to war.
But there are worrying signs. Claire McAvoy of the Small Arms Survey has been monitoring the status of the military in South Kordofan state since the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, the CPA, was signed in 2005.
The SAF was required to reduce its forces to fewer than 1,000 as part of the CPA. Now, we know that they have expanded dramatically, particularly in recent months.
So what are we talking about, 30, 40, 50?
There may be as many as 55,000. We're not able to verify that, but I think it's safe to say that there is significant deployment.
We could see for ourselves artillery in the state capital, Kadugli, and heard from people who'd seen convoys on the move.
One day I witnessed 10 tanks moving to the southward. Leave alone this small arm. According to CPA, the movement of this heavy weapon is forbidden.
These are sensitive times, and it's not easy to find out exactly what's going on, but occasionally the veil slips away. A few weeks ago, after a shooting incident in a nearby village, police uncovered a surprisingly sophisticated weapons stash.
They found some heavy machine guns in front of the cattle, and some more heavy machine guns and 2 RPGs behind. They were all brand new. I've never seen them before.
KABASH lives in the village and used to be a member of the Popular Defense Force, the PDF militia. He knows the weapons held in the area. He was surprised by what was revealed that night.
They used to have light weapons to guard the cattle, but now they have got heavy weapons. That's not for guarding cattle, that's a sign of war.
We came across some official papers that appear to confirm KABASH's account of rearmament. This is a government document. It's listed as top secret and it's headed arming the tribes. And here we have top-level instructions for arms to be handed out to the tribal leaders. Here too, the issuing and receiving orders, including one, for example, that says 300 Kalashnikovs and 3 KPM machine guns to be given to the Deju tribe. The instruction signed and stamped by the Defense Minister and the Army Chief of Staff.
I don't have any information about arming Arab tribes in the region.
But there are documents out there and there have been testimonies. Have you heard about these? They prove that there has been a movement of ammunition.
We investigated those documents. I was part of the investigation team. It's a propaganda war, that is all. We proved they were all fake.
DDR, disarmament, demobilization and reintegration. This is what Khartoum wants the world to see. Fighting men, all former PDF militia, aligned with the Khartoum government. As part of the peace process, under the auspices of the UN, they're being officially demobilized, giving up their weapons and leaving the military. But they've achieved at most 30% of their target.
Because the target for the program is 90,000. So far, we only demobilized 30,000 of our target.
We were not allowed to see any of the weapons these men handed in, which in itself raises the question as to whether the government is taking any at all, or maybe disarming with one hand, rearming with the other. But there are valid reasons why President Omar al-Bashir might want to bolster security here in South Kordofan. This could soon be Sudan's international border, but any violations of the peace agreement on either side can only exacerbate the rising sense of tension as the referendum draws nearer.
Now, we saw Ahmed HAROUN there, the governor of South Kordofan. The UN caused controversy when it flew HAROUN to a recent meeting in Abyei to reconcile the feuding Miseria and Dinka Nok tribes, despite his indictment by the International Criminal Court. For mass killings committed in Darfur, the UN says HAROUN's role in peace talks is critical.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Jane, because the plane that you're talking about there is probably the very plane that we just saw in that film, in that package that we did, because I was surprised when HAROUN stepped off a UN plane that flew in, and there was the governor of South Kordofan wanted by the ICC. But the UN would argue that, you know, they're there to provide the good offices to both the north and the south to ensure that the peace momentum is maintained and that they don't go back to war.
Exactly. Imperative to talk to all the important players to make sure that there is no outbreak of trouble in Abyei, because over the past few weeks violence has erupted in Abyei between the Miseria and the Dinka Nok. That's because the Miseria moved between north and south following food and water supplies. Absolutely,
that's right, and they've done it for centuries, for generations and generations. And if you look at the map down towards the border, all the way across South Kordofan, there are corridors, what they call corridors, where the Miseria tribespeople are allowed to take their cattle. And this was the subject of our third film, to try and find the Miseria and see them on the move. It didn't quite turn out like that, but the theory is that, you know, every year they have no home. They're continually on the move. It's perpetual migration.
It's interesting that they are the key to peace here, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. It's very important that they don't get embroiled in everything. And there's all this talk about how the Miseria are being armed by Khartoum to a degree. We didn't find that. And also, we didn't find them on the move, which is a key part of our story.
With every dried riverbed crossed, the importance of the pursuit of water becomes blatantly evident. We're following a so-called corridor set aside for the thousands of nomads to migrate north and south with their herds of cattle. We're actually trying to catch up with a group of the Miseria Zaruk tribe who are heading south to greener pastures, and you can see why. It's just dry as a bone. Movement, though, appears to be minimal. Just 1 or 2 families, their possessions, their children, their lives in perpetual migration. But this year, there are problems. When we find the main group, they've stopped. Camp has been established for 15 days now, a long, long way from their destination. The Miseria are being prevented from crossing into southern territory because of border disputes in Abyei.
The south is not safe for us this year. We are stopping here to wait for more information, but we probably won't go south.
Cattle from static camps are draining the meagre water levels which supply beast and boy. There's a real fear about how long the Miseria can last while not moving. The Miseria are constantly under pressure. We found signs of local villagers trying to drive the nomads away, burning grass to prevent them staying.
We want the country to stay united. Separation will mean big problems for us because we are constantly moving backwards and forwards from north to south.
There is another side to all this. The Miseria have been blamed for stirring up trouble themselves. In the past, they were recruited into militia groups to fight alongside the northern Sudanese during the civil war. I've heard rumours they're being armed by the Khartoum government again.
They use them. They use Miseria, maybe for the political purpose. Sometimes they use this kind of Miseria to jeopardize the situation.
Do you think weapons are still being supplied to people in the country? Is it still happening right now?
You know, 2 months ago, one of Miseria come and approach me there is this kind of mobilization. So it's like the government is arming people to back up their forces.
But the Sheikh denies his family is armed.
What I have heard is that all the groups going south are armed.
I asked if he expected fighting if those groups couldn't cross to the south.
Right now, I am expecting problems. There will be problems.
And there it is, an ancient nomadic existence threatened on all sides by a changing Sudan. A way of life that leaves them politically isolated and marginalized, with little option but to fight for their rights.
Nick, it's very clear from that the situation could go anyway.
Yeah, it's very volatile, Jane, isn't it? You know, the trip as a whole for us was enthralling, it was captivating, but you're just left with this troubling sensation that the issues are just so various and so complex that it's almost going to be impossible to unravel them all.
Well, thanks for helping us try to do that, Nick Clark. With close to 10,000 troops on the ground, it's no exaggeration to say the United Nations has been monitoring the security situation closely. The peacekeeping mission is supported by thousands of civilian staff, military observers, police and volunteers. The UN's HAILE MENKERIOS heads the operation. He told us what the organisation has been doing to ease the threat of violence.
We are reasonably confident that security will be maintained as it has been up to now during the registration. Within the south, much of what existed in terms of conflict has been reduced, if not eliminated. The last of them came in an agreement, in a ceasefire agreement with General Author. So within the south, things seem to be calm, and an understanding exists with all political groupings for a peaceful process of referendum. The government of Sudan here and the government of Southern Sudan have met and agreed and made preparations for ensuring not only security during the polling, but also protection of civilians post the referendum in the border areas, in areas where migration routes are. There is monitoring by UN troops, along, of course, with partners from both sides. There are the joint military, in other words, observer groups verifying, monitoring any kind of movement that could be a risk. And thus, I sort of believe that adequate preparations have been made to stop unwanted conflict.
Whether during times of war or peace, the people of Sudan have remained proud and protective of their land. For some, the prospect of separation is welcome and necessary. For others, it's sad and a deeply troubling time. We went out to gather a selection of opinions.
We pray hard that our nation, which is the Republic of Southern Sudan, should be expressed, and people should know outside, even USA, outside the world, to recognize us as black people and black Africans living in Southern Sudan, and we need the Republic of Southern Sudan.
I hope that Sudan will remain united, because my fear is that if we separate, people will no longer be close to each other, and we won't have the strong family bonds that hold us together.
If you are being mistreated, you rather deserve to be alone on your own. Yeah, I personally support separation.
From me and the whole team, thanks for joining us for an in-depth look at Sudan, a nation at a crossroads.